A family vacation, a luxury cruise, the open sea. To most, this would sound like the perfect escape. A floating paradise of sun, music, and endless blue, but for one young woman, it became the beginning of a nightmare. Vanishing without a trace, in the dead of night, she left behind only questions. Questions that decades later still remain unanswered. How does someone disappear from a ship where there's nowhere to run and nowhere to hide? Welcome to Seeking Answers, and if you're into true crime, don't forget to subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss an episode. And this is the strange case of Amy Lynn Bradley. In March of 1998, insurance executive Ron Bradley won himself and his family an all-expense-paid cruise on the Royal Caribbean international cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas, with the family heading to the Curaçao island. They boarded the ship on March the 21st, and just 48 hours later, their nightmare began. March the 23rd. 1998. Ron's 23-year-old daughter Amy was staying up late with her brother Brad, dancing and drinking alcohol with the ship's band Blue Orchid at a disco party on the 9th floor deck. After a few hours, Brad returned to the family's cabin on the 8th deck, arriving at 3:35 a.m. 5 minutes later, Amy followed. She and Brad sat on the balcony together, talking for a short while before the latter decided to go to bed. At some point between 5:15 and 5:30, Ron woke up to check on his children, and he saw Amy asleep on the lounge chair on the cabin's balcony. Quote, "I could see Amy's legs from her hips down. I dozed back off to sleep. The balcony door was closed because if it hadn't been closed, I would have gotten up and closed it." End quote. He didn't actually get up until 6 a.m, but at this point his daughter Amy Bradley was gone, and she would never be seen again. Panic quickly began to sink in as Ron knew that something wasn't right. Quote, "I left to try and go up and find her. When I couldn't find her, I didn't really know what to think because it was very much unlike Amy to leave and not tell us where she was going." End quote. Ron scoured the deck searching for his daughter, but Amy was nowhere to be found. They searched the common areas of the ship that she liked to visit, but she was quickly reported missing at 6:30. They alerted the ship's crew and begged them to stop the 2,000 passengers from leaving, but they refused. They claimed that it was too early to make a ship-wide announcement just yet, but they did agree to make one at 7:50. However, this would have been after the ship arrived at the island and the majority of the passengers had already disembarked. Even the announcement was brief. "Will Amy Bradley please come to the purser's desk?" The entire ship was searched, but there were no signs of Amy anywhere. Upon arrival, the Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard conducted a 4-day search with the help of a chartered boat, 3 helicopters and a radar plane, but they found nothing. And that's when the theories started to flood in. The first of which is that she committed suicide and had thrown herself overboard into the ocean, or that someone else had thrown her in. While her family remained adamant that she would have never taken her own life and was relatively happy, a former partner did claim that when Amy came out as gay in previous years, her family were not happy and were disappointed, though Amy's father Ron told a different story. Quote, "It's Amy's life. It wasn't what we would choose for her, but it's her life and we loved her unconditionally." End quote. She worked full-time at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, but had recently reduced her hours and was planning to start a new job at a computer consulting firm as soon as she returned home from the cruise. So it appears that she did plan on coming back. The possibility of her being thrown overboard also seemed unlikely. She was previously a lifeguard and was an extremely strong swimmer, so this would have most likely been noticeable. Though if you remember, she had been drinking, so it is a possibility that she was still intoxicated or hungover, and her swimming wouldn't have been as strong as it normally would be. However, it is worth noting that she was afraid of heights and initially wasn't even sure about joining the family on the cruise to begin with. She was uncomfortable with the size of the ship, but was convinced to go as her brother Brad had just returned from college and wanted to spend that time with him. In 2010, a human jawbone washed ashore in Aruba, and initially it was believed to have belonged to missing person Natalie Holloway, but after some testing it was confirmed that it wasn't. It belonged to a Caucasian woman, but it's unconfirmed whether it was Amy Bradley or not. The next theory is that she was abducted and or killed by Alister Yellow Douglas. He was a member of Blue Orchid who was seen drinking and dancing with her, even being caught on video by Chris Fenwick. Douglas claimed to have left the party at around 1 a.m. that morning, and the ship's computerized door lock system was able to verify Amy and Brad's return to their cabin a few hours later. After Ron confirmed that he saw his daughter in the chair, at some point between 5:30 and 5:45 that morning, 3 witnesses claimed to have seen Amy on the upper deck with Alister Douglas drinking and with a camera in hand. They also claimed to have seen him hand her a drink containing a dark liquid before heading to an elevator. Douglas was then spotted leaving the upper deck alone just after 6 a.m. To make matters even stranger, Brad claimed that Douglas approached him not long after the disappearance saying, quote, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister," end quote, despite the fact that the disappearance hadn't even been publicly announced yet. Douglas was interviewed by the FBI and given a polygraph test, but the results came back inconclusive. According to Ron, he, quote, "came out of the interview smiling with his thumbs up to his band members like everything's cool. I knew what was going on. I knew he had been with Amy," end quote. Douglas denied any involvement, and with absolutely no evidence, the investigation could go no further. Though other members of the ship's crew were considered suspicious as well, including a waiter who had approached the family and asked them to pass on a note to Amy that day, inviting her to go out drinking with him once they reached the island. Even stranger, there was a professional photographer on board, and once he printed out every single picture he had taken on the ship, somehow none included Amy, leading the family to believe that they had been removed by someone. The final theory is that she was abducted and trafficked, which spirals off into a barrage of possible suspects and sightings over the years. Just a month after the disappearance, the family returned to Curaçao when they were approached by a cab driver who claimed to have seen Amy once the ship docked the previous month. They claimed that she was running frantically through a parking lot, desperately looking for a phone. He recognized her from the missing poster due to her distinctive green eyes, and remembered spotting her elsewhere across the island as well, but nobody else was able to corroborate this story. In August that year, 2 Canadian drivers also reported seeing a woman who they were convinced was Amy Bradley on Playa Porto Marie Beach. One witness was David Carmichael, who claimed that she perfectly matched the description of Amy and was accompanied by 2 aggressive men, one of which matched the description of Alister Douglas. According to the witness, someone yelled out to a friend asking if they had a piece of his diving equipment to go into the ocean with. The woman, who they believed was Amy, suddenly realized that the man spoke English and spun around to face him. The individual resembling Douglas supposedly motioned for the woman to walk away to the beach's bar. Carmichael said that the woman looked terrified and tried to make eye contact as if silently pleading for help. The witness was only around 2 feet away from her and was able to perfectly describe her eyes and tattoos, having recognized her from missing posters, and would later say, quote, "I am haunted by that encounter with Amy. I know it was her," end quote. The FBI investigated this story and the family even met with the witness, but nothing further ever came of it. It was January 1999 when US Navy Petty Officer William Hefner claimed to have actually encountered a woman at a brothel in Curaçao. His story is that he was in the bar when a Caucasian woman approached him, calling herself Amy Bradley and asking for help, claiming to have been held there against her will. She told him that she was on a cruise and then left to get some drugs before she was kidnapped and trapped. Hefner didn't report this story right away as he was concerned that his military career could be in jeopardy, considering that he was at a brothel, but he did reach out to the family in May of 2002. The FBI decided to investigate, but unfortunately, by this point the brothel had burned down and no evidence remained. But then came the cruelest twist of all. It was in the autumn of 1999 when Amy's parents received an email from a man by the name of Frank Jones, who claimed to have been a former US Army Special Forces officer with a team of experienced soldiers who may be able to rescue their daughter. He told them that he had a team in Curaçao who'd located Amy being held by armed men in a guarded compound. He was able to perfectly describe her tattoos and even managed to sing the lullaby that her mother used to sing to her as a child. Jones spent months reporting various sightings to the family and claimed that they were beginning to plan a rescue mission but needed more money. The Bradleys felt desperate and they did oblige, sending him $210,000. Unfortunately, it turned out that this story was entirely made up and there was no such rescue mission. He was eventually charged with mail fraud and sentenced to 5 years in prison. In April 2003, some witnesses reported spotting a woman matching Amy's description in San Francisco, California. This woman was watching a street musician and was accompanied by 2 men. The witness claimed to have recognized her instantly, but once the 2 men realized that they had been noticed, they grabbed the woman and quickly fled the scene. The woman reportedly gave the witness a pleading look as she was hurried away. In March 2 years later, witness Judy Mora claimed to have been in a department store in Bridgetown in Barbados. Her story is that she was in the restroom when a woman entered with 4 men, describing what sounded like an illegal deal. The woman reportedly asked the men if she could, quote, stop and see the children, end quote. The men then left the restroom, so the witness exited her stall to speak to her. She claimed that the woman spoke softly, admitting to being called Amy and that she was from West Virginia. Judy immediately called the police and helped create composite sketches of both the woman and the men involved, but she was never found. Although I'm not sure why she wouldn't just call the police from the restroom and not let her leave in the first place. On November the 17th that year, the parents appeared on Dr. Phil after having received emails of a scantily clad woman. They believed that this was their daughter who had been trafficked into sexual slavery, but the authenticity of these photographs could not be identified. According to Special Agent Erin Sheridan, quote, we did not follow that lead. The difficult part is back then, information such as that or pictures such as that, you cannot tell when they're altered, end quote. However, one member of the FBI did perform some facial comparisons and was convinced that it was Amy Bradley. On March the 24th, 2010, Amy Bradley was declared legally dead after 12 years of hope, heartbreak and endless searching, despite all of the sightings, reports and the lack of evidence or a body. According to FBI Special Agent James Weber, quote, we've pursued every angle from whether there was foul play, or an accident, and we have basically not gotten anywhere, end quote. The FBI offered a $25,000 reward for any information on her whereabouts, while the family offered $250,000 for her safe return and $50,000 for any information on her current location. Even as recently as 2025, podcaster Ethan Klein offered a staggering $1 million reward, but still no trace of Amy has ever been found. Despite countless theories and alleged sightings, the truth behind Amy Bradley continues to be shrouded in mystery. Did she vanish by choice? Was she taken against her will? Or is there another explanation that just hasn't come to light yet? Or did something far more sinister unfold aboard that luxury cruise? For the Bradleys, one truth remains. The pain of not knowing is a weight that time simply cannot lift. One thing is for certain. Until the day answers are found, Amy's disappearance will remain one of the ocean's darkest secrets. The question is, will the truth ever surface? And will we ever stop seeking answers?